I want to talk about the big three. These are the three things that this is dead on arrival. And this is why, like we bat people away if they have these issues. The very first one is it's a big, broad bucket, and it's not fair of me, but it's hard to put everything in it. If your website is broken, don't drive traffic to it. That sounds like an obvious thing to say. You'd be surprised at how many people break that rule. You want to walk through your website, and we have a diagnostic test that will help you figure out. There are people on Fiverr that will help you do this. You can get your mom to help you if you want to. Make sure that your website doesn't have any glaring issues. Your menu, when somebody clicks on a menu button, it actually brings them to wherever it is that they're asking to go. If they try to put a product in the cart, the product actually lands in the cart, and they can check out all the way through beyond paying for the product, etc. Walk through the quality assurance facets of your website. Do this regularly. There's something called code degradation. I don't really know what that means, but I know that my web developers tell me it. And your website can just break. It happens with theme updates, hosting updates, server changes. Even if you're on Shopify, which is a hosted solution, you'll notice that sometimes there's a disconnect between plugins, a disconnect between themes, whatever. Make sure that you have set a reminder for yourself to at least once a month walk through your site and just play around. Make sure there aren't any glaring issues. Anything to talk about website issues, John? Anything we've run into? 404 errors are huge. It kills ad campaigns.
Yeah, I would say, and we're going to be talking about speed more in depth, but speed has a really big impact on your quality score. So quality score is made up of three main items, which is expected click-through rate, landing page experience, and ad relevancy. Landing page experience, a lot of people believe, and while it's true to some degree, that the landing page experience means, oh, my content that I have in my ads and my keywords is not found on my website. While that is a factor in for the rest of 2021 and 2022, Google has essentially come out and said that speed is actually a little bit more important than the content on the site. While the content on the site is important, but the speed is going to be even more important. So don't overlook website speed. And the biggest thing for website speed is going to be image sizes. If you have too big of an image and then Shopify is trying to resize that image, you can have a very slow landing page. And we'll show you ways to test those the landing page. And when I say landing pages, it's going to be product pages, possibly homepage, depending upon what campaigns you're running. But landing page speed is a huge, huge issue. We've helped save clients because we've done everything that we can in Google. I'm like, let's work on that page speed. All of a sudden, quality score increases, your cost per click goes down, you get more visitors for the same ad spend, and all of a sudden you make more sales, and they're able to navigate your site quickly. So speed is, if you were saying like website issues and errors, those can be overcome, and you can still get good sales from your website. Mobile engagement, obviously really, really important, but website speed is, if your website isn't fast, you can't get to the issues and errors or mobile engagement before speed, because speed is at that barrier to entry. So in a hierarchy of importance, going top down from level of priority, website speed should be the number one thing that you want to look at.
A bad website speed is going to impact the ability for a mobile device to engage, because speed exacerbates when you're on a smaller device with a lower connection. Mm-hmm. So for mobile, and what do you think the average is now, John? It used to be 60% of your traffic is mobile. It's got to be higher.
It says 65, 66 is what the average is. I keep looking at it. I'm expecting it to change, but for whatever reason, computer's still there.
Yeah, well, it's still significant. And it's funny because people build websites on a computer and they test websites on a computer. And then the very last thing we do is just go check it out on the phone real quick, briefly, before we go live. You want to go for a mobile first paradigm. Make sure that your website is very mobile friendly, because you're going to notice that helps improve engagement. I've noticed as well with higher ticket items, and this is mildly anecdotal, but even if your purchases aren't necessarily happening on mobile, if they're happening on desktop, the research is happening on mobile. And so take a look at your conversion path. You want to see what are the different touch points that somebody has and what are the devices they're using in order to kind of inform that conversion path. Mm-hmm. Here's our CRO checklist. This is actually pulled together by the head of our technical team, Yvonne, who's on this call. He's the poor guy that actually has to do this work. So the very first bullet point is more of a catch-all. Make sure your site's working properly. We want to make sure that the site is fast, and you want to make sure that you're using Google page. I misspelled Google. You want to make sure you're using the right tools to test. So if you go to a developer and you say, my Google page speed insight rank is low, what they're going to do is they're going to show you GT metrics. And they're going to say, well, your website speed is fine. Look over here at these other diagnostic tools. And here's the thing. They are probably correct. The problem is Google is measuring your page speed according to their own tools. And page speed insight, my understanding of it is it doesn't necessarily take into consideration things like latent loading. So where other site speed tools are going to measure how long it takes for the site to load for the customer, and then allow, server side and sort of subsequent processes to load in the background, Google says, no, we want to know what all this looks like in its entirety. And that's why your Google page speed is probably lower than your page speed in other tools. Sucks for you, sucks for me. This is the game that we have to play. So if you're talking to somebody and you're going to hire somebody to help you, you want to make sure to manage the expectation that this is the tool that you want to improve page speed inside of. And I just dropped a link inside of chat so everybody has it.
And can we actually just go to Google, just use google.com as right here. Nope.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, just to run page speed insights. Here's what's interesting. So Google measures their mobile site speed against the AMP, I guess, as a benchmark, accelerated mobile projects. So what's funny is you'll see here that Google says, hey, my own website is slow. Google gave itself a yellow rating. But here's the 4 things that Google's going to be counting on. And this is actually true for SEO and PPC. If you look at the 4 metrics here, first contentful paint, first input delay, largest contentful paint, and cumulative layout shift. These 4 areas are what Google is measuring your landing page score against. So the landing page score is these 4 areas here. Now, normally you'd want to have a developer take a look at this and they would be able to identify ways to increase that speed. But if you look down underneath, there we go. So like diagnostics and opportunities, this will actually, they're accordions, and they'll tell you exactly what you need to do in order to increase your page speed. So reduce unused JavaScript, avoid multiple, I don't know what that was up there. Avoid multiple page redirects. So here's image elements. So essentially I'm not sure why this looks broken on their side, but usually it'll give you a picture of the image that it says, hey, this image is too large. You need to reduce the size of this image. So if you wanted to, when you're running the page speed insights, you can run it on your own site, then send that link right to a developer or freelancer that you trust and say, hey, can you work on these? And it'll give them a checklist, a task list of everything that they need to do in order to bring up that page speed and how much page speed is going to be increased because of it.
Awesome. You want to make sure that your contact information is in the header and or footer. This isn't just because of compliance requirements. People tend not to buy from people they don't think they can get in touch with. And that's something that consumers, especially if you have a small site and an unknown brand, it's something I check for. It's like, how receptive and available are you going to be to me in case I have an issue or a problem? You'd be surprised at how much a phone number can improve conversion, even though they're never calling. They just want the comfort of knowing that they can call. Now, I realize a lot of people are building a lifestyle business and they don't want phone calls. And if that's the case, that's okay. But at least try to prioritize an email. Let people know that you're going to be there and you're going to be receptive, you're going to be available. The website design, I think this is, again, I don't want to overemphasize this. I don't feel like you need, Web 2.0 or what are we on now? Are we on like 9.0?
Who knows?
Are we on
I don't
15,
know the difference.
Yeah. Anyway, you don't need like the biggest, baddest website design in the whole wide world, but you want to make sure that it's appealing, that it's clean, that it's aesthetic. The way to look at your website, in my opinion, is to look at it the same way you buy a picture frame. It's the picture that matters. Your product is the picture. And so, the investment you're making in the frame is meant to make your products look as good as possible. So be really careful with websites that might distract from that. Specifically websites that, aren't going to fall into the background. I've heard it said that a musical score in a film is only good if you don't know it's there. The minute you identify the musical score, that's when you know that the person writing the music didn't do a good job, because it's supposed to be in the background. It's supposed to support and supplement the story. Your website should be the exact same way. Your website is the musical score to this film, and the products are the main characters, and they're telling the story. That got super philosophical. I'm sorry. We're going to talk about image quality and even offer up some advice in terms of how to produce some pretty quality images by yourself without any cash out of pocket. Make sure that you have really solid descriptions and features are displayed. John does a good job of showing how this influences Google algorithmically. Use contrast colors for your call to action. This means isolation effect. There are some people that do this really well. One of my favorite is Boom by Cindy Joseph. So we've got Ezra Firestone, who's like the godfather of ecom. And this dude makes sure that you always know where the button is, because he's got, the only time you ever see this bright pink is when you're going to go do something for Ezra. And that's the isolation effect. And to be honest with you, even his tends to kind of blend in from a brand perspective. There are some people that will make it like an obnoxious color that doesn't even coalesce or coincide with the brand. You want people to identify exactly where it is they need to go in order to take action. That's the isolation effect. Those are contrast colors. Make sure you're using social proof and reviews. We're going to talk about this as well. And then verification badges. Again, these can improve, especially for smaller brands. If you haven't been around a while, this helps improve just the trust that people experience with your site. If you're using a merchant processor, they've got generally like embeddable badges that you can use. If you're part of an organization that has a badge, the Better Business Bureau, I feel like, has lost some of its luster over time, but there's still, especially if you're serving a specific demographic, and what I really mean by that is a specific generation, there's a group of people that still feel very strongly that the BBB shows well. And then the other thing to do too is take anything that you're offering, you can turn it into a badge. If you're offering free shipping and free returns, those are badgeable. And if it's text standalone, that's just text. But if it's a badge, all of a sudden it became real. People trust badges to degrees that I don't necessarily understand. John, anything to add to our CRO checklist here from Yvonne?
Nothing that we're going to be not talking about already here in the next few slides. Yep.
I also love that Carlos just took a swipe at ClickFunnels. That you just became my favorite person. So some CRO best practices. Somebody asked earlier about a theme. Shopify actually has a theme called the Light theme. So don't confuse my note here with saying choose that theme specifically. Make sure you choose a theme that's lightweight. And you can tell that often, A, there's a 1,000,000,001 forums of people talking about what the best theme is and why. And B, when you're looking at the demo for the theme, you can usually tell how quickly the demo loads. And that can be a solid indication of how well that theme is going to load. If you've got a good developer, a really good developer can make phenomenal inroads from a speed perspective. But I wouldn't rely too heavily on that. Not least of which because even if they improve your site speed, and this has happened to us quite a few times, the minute there's a major update, like if Shopify changes their code base, a lot of what that developer customized goes away. So you want to make sure that your website can be fast as it stands without too much heavy customization. Because if you rely on heavy customization, you know, there's no telling when that customization is forced into obsolescence. And now you're back to being reliant upon the foundational utilities. We want to make sure that you're scaling your images properly. I see this a lot. I've made this mistake a lot where you've got, you know, a 2,000 pixel image in a spot that will only take a 500 pixel image. So there's really easy tools that you can use online to make sure you're resizing images correctly. But this is a real quick and easy win for page speed. And to be honest with you, in some cases for mobile loading, because oftentimes what you notice on a mobile device is the device loads the site in its entirety first and then scales it down. And so this can kind of improve engagement too. John, did I see you gearing up to pipe up?
Nope. No, I was going to say the theme updates from a customization theme. We've run into this issue a few times, and that's kind of why we're speaking about it. But heavy custom themes, which is where they kind of ignores the framework that is Shopify, or a theme that is standard to like WooCommerce or BigCommerce, or a theme that's kind of standard in the industry. When you have themes that possibly can have a forced update, we see this a lot with WordPress. WordPress has, you know, they kind of force you to update their themes, or the website just doesn't work anymore. So when you look at heavy customizable themes, you can still use them. But one thing to be considerate of is updates to those themes sometimes wipe custom code. And the custom code could be your Google Tag Manager, your analytics, and your conversion tracking, your remarketing tags. So those type of non-standard implementations can be wiped, where you might update the PHP version of your WordPress site, and there's a small update that happens on the back end, and it kills possibly a plugin, or that page no longer loads quickly, and all of a sudden conversion tracking just goes away, and you're not exactly sure why. So those are important to know, that anytime that there's a website update, I can't tell you how many times, so it's probably been over 100 times, where all of a sudden conversion tracking just stopped because of a website update. So that's going to be something that's going to be very important, especially in Google Ads, because Google has a 2-day rule. After 2 days of non-activity, Google stops learning. And so if you're losing conversion tracking for 4, 5, 6 days, and then you restart. It's not like it's going to be restarting from scratch, but you know that restart after 5 or 6 days of inactivity, you're going to have a little bit of a relearning period for possibly a week or two before you find a level of normalcy. And that's sometimes a little bit painful, especially if you're in higher spends or you've been finally scaling up to a specific degree. So we usually recommend having a developer, not that you have to pay $500 a month for just to kind of hang out, but someone that you trust and that can work quickly. That if you see or if they know that a website update is coming, you can retest your conversions. Make sure that your conversions are still working properly and the code's still at least found on the page. Because that is something that we've had starts and stops and sputters for a long time, and it just becomes a nightmare to try to scale Google or at least get some level of normalcy and consistency. So just be wary about any sort of updates that come to the site. You'll see in our checklist, we do it weekly that we check conversion tracking for all of our clients. That's a part of our SOP that every single week we check conversion tracking. Even if it's been 2 years, we still check it. So that's just something that be mindful of.
Cool. Decrease the weight of images, which is, kind of a cool little pro tip from Yvonne. Thank you, Yvonne. Aha. Limit the amount of plugins and apps. It's such a noted point of hypocrisy from us, because on one hand, you get on calls with us and we're talking to like Scott and going back and forth on, and you can do order bumps and here's what Zipify does. And we just like, we're kids in candy stores when it comes to some of the things that are possible. And then on the other end, I'm like, well, don't use too many apps or plugins because it's going to slow down your site. This is the balance of risks that you get to, decide on your own. And it will never not be an issue. And it's just something to be cognizant of and play with. There's a lot of information out there as to what plugins tend to slow down sites. And so I would just recommend doing that research before going all in on something that might, not necessarily improve site speed. I've also noticed that this isn't something that people pay a lot of attention to, which is shocking to me. Carlos mentioned ClickFunnels earlier. Like ClickFunnels site speed is so horrible, like so abysmal. And it's a landing page company, and it just makes you wonder, like, how on earth did you lead pages isn't any better. So just because this is important and it's an axiom, don't expect the creators of these products to have figured this out for you. Like, you need to advocate on your own behalf.
It's so important too that smart shopping campaigns usually hover around the 56 cents cost per click. That's where usually smart shopping campaigns, if we took an aggregate total of all of our campaigns right now that we're running, it's usually about 50.
Did that. Who's on the call? I said Regina did that. Who's on the call?
Yeah, so let's just say about 50 cents. Your site speed being slow can bring that up to $1. And so that's where it's super important to understand that. And when 50 cents up to $1, it's like, yeah, that stinks. But if you think about it, you cut your traffic in half, or you double your
cost. Yeah.
Right. So Google makes you pay to play when you're not following by their best practice. It's like, okay, so your landing page score is low, which drove down your quality score. Now your quality score is low. We're going to give you a lower position for it. Yeah, we want the higher position. All right, double your CPC, and you can get there. So Google penalizes you with ad spend and cost per click, essentially, if you have a slow website. So again, I know we're kind of harping on this, but just don't overlook it.
But it's important to harp on. I mean, listen to what John just said, y'all. You can double the cost of your traffic with this one problem, this one issue, this one error. Mm-hmm. So it's really important that we spend some time here, because this is an important thing to improve upon. And Shopify, I know not everybody's on Shopify, but if you want a Shopify theme, Shopify has a directory of Shopify developers that you can draw upon, and it's cool because you can see reviews and work that they've done, etc. So it might be worth, if you're on Shopify, going and finding somebody who's Shopify specific. And I always ask to see, because everybody says they can do it when they're trying to earn the gig. I ask to see, show me the fastest site that you've built. And then they show it. And I'm like, all right, now show me the second fastest site that you built. And I want to see at least 3 successful implementations before I'm confident that you're really going to be able to pull this off. And don't ask for 3 on the front end, because they'll go find 3. Ask for them one at a time, because you got to like rope them into being a little bit more honest than they might have been otherwise.
And run those websites through PageSpeed Insights.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Limit the amount of products that are displayed on certain pages. I actually like long form pages because it keeps, it can improve your time on site. There's ways to do this though, to where you have a long form page that loads as the user tries to scroll, instead of somebody landing right on the page and having to sit there while 100,000 products load. One note, don't aim for 100 out of 100. You're not going to get it. I don't think I've ever seen an e-commerce site, especially on mobile. Has anybody had it? Anybody?
Google can't.
Google can't. Yeah, exactly right. Google can't get 100. We're not going to get 100. I've seen it in the 90s. I'm thinking of the lighting company. Remember them? I've seen it in the 90s. I think if you're like at an 80 out of 100, that would be.
They're the 90s, but those are the type of companies that's like, we have 300 grand ad spend this month. What can you do? So
right.
just, yeah.
It's
like that. I always say it's like that funny car, like the drag car that they're like doing a quarter mile in 4 seconds. Like how to get down to 3. It's like, we're going to need like $1 million.
Yeah.
So
and that's a really good point too. Every point that you improve past a certain point, it's incremental returns for costs that are so substantial. It's probably not worth it. Yeah. Quality assurance. John referenced this already, but this is an important thing to bake into your systems. So we gave you our checklist, which everybody should have now. In our checklist, we're checking conversion tracking once a month at an absolute minimum. If you have a higher spend, we check more often. The way to do this is to be your own customer. So you should walk through your site and try to break it. Try to think of all the things that somebody might do. Like if I started on mobile and moved over to desktop, what happens? If I'm, meaning I'm logged in, I put something in my cart and then I leave, is the session ID maintaining? If I'm, leaving, coming back, breaking things, whatever, like try to figure out all the ways that you might frustrate a customer and make an actual purchase. This is something else that surprised me when we ran the first 3X Shopify challenge, how few people had bought from themselves on their own site. Because that's the key thing. So go spend the $10 or whatever it's going to take, create a dummy product for yourself if you need to, but go all the way through to product completion. And then once you've done that, go hire somebody else to do it. If it needs to be mom, that's okay. But there's actually people that will do this for you. There are people on Fiverr that for $5 will walk through your site and give you advice, improvement opportunities. And you know what? Even if you don't agree with any of it, it's a good recorded video that you get to see how somebody else engages with your site. And this is somebody who's completely fresh and knows nothing. So make sure that you're doing a little internal QA. Once you've exhausted that, go do a little external QA. I don't like using the same person from external QA because they've already seen the site. So every subsequent time, they're sort of indoctrinated. My important note here, and I actually kind of feel this way about all things management, offer goals, not guidance. You don't want to tell somebody how to do something. They're no longer a quality assurance person for you. Now they're just chalking up checklist. Just say, hey, I'd love to see what would happen if you wanted to build, let's say that you've got a site that sells camping gear and you're like, you're going camping, you're going to Yellowstone, you need everything that you would need to go camping, build that shopping cart. And now you get to see the way that they approach that, how they're doing their product research and reviews, how it is that they're building the shopping cart, what they're looking at, where they go to look for promo codes, that type of thing. Offer goals, not guidance. Tell them where you want them to go, but don't tell them how to get there. Any input on that, John?
No, I think that's a good idea. It's so overlooked too. And that's part of our SOP. We make a test purchase with every new client to make sure that A, obviously conversion tracking working, but B, there's not some oddity where it's like, hey, unless you have a 1 before the phone number, it just won't take your phone number. I mean, little things like that just upset a user because they might have 3 kids running around and someone's trying to come to the front door and they're trying to order something, and if one of those fields doesn't work, then they just leave. So yeah, it's just always a great idea to test to see if I was half paying attention, could I do this? Because you'd be surprised about
litmus test. If I was half paying attention, could I do this? Dude, that's brilliant. Yeah, because that's exactly what's happening. They're kind of like, they're sort of there. I always get like, some of the themes come preloaded with international settings. If you're only selling in one country, get rid of those settings. It's so annoying to find United States, 50% of the way down the drop down, or like John said, like, is it +1? Or if you're in a different country, make sure, or even a small collection of countries, you can typically narrow down on those options and just make little tiny micro improvements to make it a little bit easier. Go look at your competitors. And this doesn't have to necessarily be somebody that sells the exact thing that you're selling. It can be like an analogous product to yours, but figure out what they're doing. Like, what have they done? And then try to reverse engineer why. And oftentimes just asking yourself that question yields really phenomenal results. Like, why would it be this way? What is it that they've figured out that they haven't figured out? Sometimes it ends up being kind of a functional difference. You'll notice that competitors have built in, product options or imagery just because it's easier for them to scale. One thing I see in the e-com space a lot is it's the same image and then they use Photoshop to customize, product customization or colors. And while that's not my favorite thing in the whole wide world to do, if you have 1,000 t-shirts, that's probably a little bit easier than taking 1,000 different pictures. So you can kind of inform how it is you plan on approaching things by looking at your competitors. Some notes, maybe pro tips. we use, what did we use last? Lucky Orange?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is screen recording software, and you can install software on your site. Full disclosure, it might slow down your site, but you can install software on your site, and you can actually track from a heat map perspective where people's cursor goes. And you can also see what they do both on desktop and on mobile. This is amazing, especially for new e-commerce sites. If you're driving traffic and people aren't converting, you get to figure out why. And what you'll see is, we saw this on our site. People were clicking on things that they thought were clickable that ended up not going anywhere. And they were trying to take action, you know, it's something that looked like an accordion wasn't an accordion, or something that looked like it would have been a hyperlink wasn't a hyperlink. The other thing that I noticed is we had a really, I thought, we had a piece of content of significant value that was below the threshold at which the majority of our traffic reached on our homepage. And it kind of gave us a sense as to how to order some of our content. So I'm pretty sure Hotjar, one of them has a free version. True Conversion's owned by Digital Marketer. We're buddies with them. So if you want to use them, that's great. I think they had an AppSumo deal at one point.
I think Lucky Orange is like $12 a month. So it's fairly inexpensive. Yeah. I know. What's that?
Hotjar is free one.
Hotjar is free.
Yeah.
I like Lucky Orange just because I think what's really cool about it is, it's like $10 a month, and you get 25,000 visits a month, but you get a live chat.
It's super creepy.
Feature.
You get to pop
it is, yeah. So you can actually watch people on the site live, and wherever they're going, if you want to, you can start chat, and you can type in a custom message. So if someone's on like the checkout page and they're like they're clicking around, you can actually pop up a chat bar and be like, hey, do you need any help checking out? Like, you can actually send people messages and start chatting with them live. That I don't see any other tools doing that. That's a heat mapping and screen recording software. But that it's pretty cool because you can actually start to chat people, and if they don't engage the chat, even if we'll talk about live chat, you can actually ask them a very specific question that you get really good engagement with. And sometimes it's like, yeah, I was gonna buy this, but I didn't know A, B, and C. It's like perfect. Instead of waiting for them to come, you can be proactive and go out to them.
Here's the analogy that I want to offer everybody. I'm gonna stop sharing so I can see faces. This was given to me by Ryan Dice. Ryan says that digital marketing, specifically traffic driving, is pouring water into a leaky bucket. And the leakier your bucket, the less effective your marketing. The more you're able to shore up your bucket, the more effective your marketing becomes. What this type of software does is it allows you to diagnose where those leaks are. And so it's frustrating. It's actually a really good visual. The traffic that you're driving from Google is really, really, really expensive water. And you're pouring into this bucket and you have no idea where the leaks are. That's a catastrophic error. Not being able to see where your bucket is leaking from, that's just a recipe for disaster. And you're hemorrhaging money, and you're doing it intentionally. So putting yourself in a position, and you do that with things like Google Analytics, screen recording software, wicked reports if necessary, data analysis tools that let you see where your leaks exist, and then you get to go plug the leaks. Sometimes you'll misdiagnose. That's okay. That's going to be par for the course. But I'd rather see you taking action than just pouring a bunch of water into a leaky bucket. Most of the clients that come to Solutions 8 that are already running Google Ads, I can't say most, a really large percentage of them though. They think they just need to spend more money or improve their Google Ads, but really what they need to do is they need to shore up their bucket. And sometimes one or two really basic changes makes us look like rock stars, because all of a sudden the efficacy of the campaign doubled. But we just made sure that we're capitalizing on everything that you're already sending to the campaign. Michael's asking, do you typically only leave it installed for a limited time to diagnose issues, or leave it permanently? It's always been for us a diagnostic utility. Like, we added Lucky Orange to ourselves, and I think we removed it within 90 days once we were fully converted.
A lot of times it's for specific testing. So if you have like a new product, or if you have we used it for lead generation. So we wanted to see, we put our pricing on the page, but it was at about 60% down the page. We found out that 65% of the traffic only makes it 50% down the page. Then now we're missing our pricing. So half the people that are coming to our website are asking what's the price is, and when it's on the homepage, we're like, why are people not knowing what the price is? It's on the page. Then we found out that they didn't make it down that far. So thinking like, how would you start to optimize your product pages? Well, what if all of your amazing videos are below your pictures, your price, your descriptions, your social proof, and then all of your amazing videos? And then Lucky Orange, as an example, says, well, your heat map shows that people scroll down 50% of your traffic only go to here. The other 50% of the traffic go down further. And then it shows like 40, 30, 20, 10. And so you might not see that only 30% of your people that come to your product page aren't seeing your videos. Well, maybe you need to possibly switch to a theme that supports your image gallery to have a video in the image gallery itself. So this way people can actually see a product demonstration that will, now 70% of the more traffic is seeing your videos. So things like that. Or if you see that, your abandoned cart rate is 85%, you're like, why is my abandoned cart rate 15% higher than the average? Well, using those type of screen recording software, you can see that when they go through the checkout, there might be issues there that happen. People might always, end up, hitting an email one, and for whatever reason, that one just always shows an error on that page. And what's nice about it is another reason why I like Lucky Orange better is it shows you the device, the operating system, and the I think it's something else. I forget exactly what it is.
Device, OS, browser.
Yeah, but if it's like, hey, we noticed that the people go to 6 pages on average and stay the longest, but don't ever buy when they're on an Apple Safari, but on Apple and Chrome it has a great conversion rate. Well, maybe your checkout page has an issue with that browser on that specific device. So it's really good for diagnosing. You can always run it kind of right in the beginning and just say, hey, is there anything there that I might not have known? And just watch people make their purchases and say, yep, this looks good, everything's fine, and then you can remove it. But it's really good to if you ever said, man, I really would like to know what people are doing on my site, that's the tool to use.
I was trying to get into our old dashboard, but it's disabled when we canceled.
Yeah.
There's another quote from Ryan, who y'all will forgive me, I'm just such a fanboy, so I'm going to quote him a lot. But he says that prescription without diagnosis is malpractice. And that's really worth taking into consideration when you're doing this type of task. Prescription without diagnosis is malpractice. Because, and I've done this myself, the classic example is you send an email, the open rate is abysmal, so you rewrite the email. Nobody saw the damn email. Rewrite the subject line and send it again. But we tend to go towards optimizing the thing that we feel is important instead of paying attention to what it is that the customer feels important. I think John's example is phenomenal. If your media isn't prioritized on the page, then don't recreate the media, just change the page layout, those types of things. So make sure that you get a prescription before you diagnose. And the way to do that is software tools like this. Is there anything Shopify specific? Shopify's got to have their own screen recording plugin.
Probably. I mean, they have a million apps, so I'm sure there has to be something.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that. Don says you can also look at conversion data by device and browser and Google Analytics. Really, really good point, Don. And y'all, Google Analytics is should be your best friend in the whole wide world from a diagnostic perspective. Anytime there's ever a problem, I always notice John goes straight to Google Analytics just to see, what could potentially be wrong.